Hello everyone and welcome to our next lesson. So the first thing I would like you to do please is pause the video and match up the quantities on the left hand side of the screen, so acceleration, final velocity, etc., to the middle column, which is the symbol I would expect to see in an equation. So for example, if I saw this letter, I'd know it was acceleration. And then finally, can you then match up to the right hand side the units, so what are they measured in? Now this is just rough work, so if you do that in the back of your book, that will be perfect. Okay, assuming everyone's had a go at that, let's match them up, shall we? So acceleration is A in an equation, and it's measured in meters per second squared. People always forget the squared, so please do not forget. Next one, final velocity is V, and it's measured in meters per second. Now there are 2 meters per second on the right hand side, so I don't mind which one you go to. Beginning velocity is U, and again it's measured in meters per second. And our final one, time, is obviously T, and it's measured in seconds. So today we are looking at something called the equations of motion. So if you can please title and date. It's not the 17th of Jan when you're seeing this, so whatever today's date is would be perfect. Now I'm going to introduce you to an equation which is, I'm going to say, the hardest one out of your whole GCSE course. So I'm sure you know by now that you are doing your GCSE course, that's what we're studying. And this is, as I say, probably the hardest equation you come across. So we're going to do it over 2 lessons, there's plenty of time, and we'll have lots of practice on it. And if you are a bit overwhelmed by it, that's okay, because we will keep coming back to it throughout the years. By the time it takes for you to do your GCSE, you will be experts at it. But I do also want you to remember how overwhelmed people felt at the beginning of this year when we first started doing equations in physics, and what absolute masters you all are now. So if you've made that progress already, I have full faith in you that you can do this equation. So here we go. So our equation, I told you it looked a bit intimidating. V squared, so final velocity squared, equals U squared plus 2 times A times D. Now here, U is what we call initial velocity, which I also called beginning speed. Acceleration, you know, distance, I mean, that's absolutely fine, isn't it? So if I wanted to work out the final velocity, I'd need to do so V, because notice that's V squared on the top left hand side, would be the square root of all of it. So U squared plus 2AD. Now you might be thinking, what? Get it written down, get your unit labels, and we'll go through a practice question. So here's a practice question. A squirrel is running at 2 meters per second. Oh no, my battery's going to die. I'll plug this in whilst I read. And I'll just make this skinnier. A squirrel is running at 2 meters per second. They accelerated a rate of 3 meters per second squared over a distance of 4 meters. What is their final speed? Now you know the drill by now. First thing you do, whenever you see a number, you circle it, you label it. So a squirrel is running at 2 meters per second. So that's either going to be U or V, isn't it? Because they're both speeds. So I'm going to put U or V for the time being, and then later on we can figure out which one is which. They accelerated a rate of 3 meters per second squared. Meters per second squared, that's an acceleration, so that's A, over a distance of 4 meters, so that's D. What is their final speed? Right, final speed is V, which means, do you remember at the beginning we were like, oh, is it U, is it V? Clearly that's U that we're working out. So let's now write out what we know. V is a question mark, U is 2, A is 3, D is 4. I haven't bothered to put the units there because otherwise the squares confuse people, and I just thought, no, let's leave it. So, write out the equation. V squared equals U squared plus 2AD. Now let's plot our numbers in. So 2 squared plus, now please put this bit in brackets, 2 times 3 times 4. So V squared equals 4 plus 2, 12, 24. So 4 plus 24. So V squared equals 28. Now that is not the final speed, that is the final speed squared. So to get to the final speed, I'm going to have to square root that. So V is going to be the square root of 28, which comes out as 5.3 meters per second. So I'm going to get you to write that down for me, please. Write the question, write how I answer it, and then we're going to do some practice questions together. So, assuming everyone's had a go at that, pause the video and have a go at these practice questions. In a second, I shall go through the answers with you. So, assuming everyone's had a go at those practice questions, let's go through the answers. Darcy accelerates at a rate of, sorry, it's my squeaky chair, so squeaky, 2 meters per second squared, so that's A, over 8 meters, that's distance. She started at 2 meters per second, that's U. What is her final velocity? So we're working out V. So, question number 1, V squared equals U squared plus 2AD equals 2 squared plus, in brackets, 2 times 2 times 8. So that's 16, 32 plus 4. V squared equals 4 plus 32 equals 36. Remember, that is not our final answer because we still have to square root it. V equals the square root of 36 equals 6 meters per second. That's our answer. Let's do the next one. Becky is running at 4 meters per second, so that's going to be our U. She then accelerates with 1.5 meters per second squared over a distance of 100 meters. What is her final velocity? So number 2. V squared equals U squared plus 2AD, that's 2AD, sorry. So U squared was 4 squared plus, open brackets, 2 times acceleration, 1.5 times distance, 100, equals 16 plus 300 equals 316. Now remember, that is not our final answer. We still need to square root it. V is the square root of 316. I'm just going to get my calculator out because I can't do this one in my head. Which gives me 17.8 meters per second. Okay, number 3. Isabella unicycles 300 meters. Okay, that's a distance. She starts at 5 meters per second, so that's U, and accelerates at a rate of 3 meters per second squared. Okay, that's A. What's her final velocity? So I'm going to go down here now. So V squared, I hope you can see that, equals U squared plus 2AD. U was, where are we, 5? So 5 squared plus 2 times A, which was 3 times D, it's 300. Oh, I shouldn't have done this down here. It's way too squashed. Sorry, everyone. Okay, so equals 25 times 1,000, 25 plus 1,800. What am I doing? Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Right, ignore this. Plus 1,800. 25, yeah. Equals 1825. And again, we then need to square root. So V is the square root of 1825. Equals 42.8 meters per second. Okay, and number 4, Emma is hopping at 4 meters per second, so that's U. She accelerates at a rate of 2 meters per second squared, so that's A, over a distance of 18 meters, that's D. What's her final velocity? Right, let's go up here for this one, shall we? So number 3, V squared equals U squared plus 2AD equals 4 squared plus, open brackets, 2 times acceleration, which was 2, times distance, which was 18. So that is 16 plus 72. Which is 88. So V squared equals 88. And now we just need to square root it. V is the square root of 88, which is 9.4 meters per second. Okay, hopefully you're like, okay, it looks tricky, but that's okay. Now I'm going to show you the rearranged versions. So here are the rearranged versions. U squared equals V squared minus 2AD. So if I want to find the beginning speed, it's there. Remember, that's not the beginning speed on its own, that's the beginning speed squared. So again, just like our last one, to find it on its own, you're going to need to square root it. If I want to work out acceleration, here's the rearranged version. And if I want to work out distance, there's a rearranged version. So when you're doing the next questions, you're going to figure out what they're asking for and then pick the appropriate equation. So pause the video, copy those down, and let's have a go at some more practice questions. Okay, I'm going to do practice question number 1 with you, and then I'm going to get you to do the rest of them and send me a photo. So question number 1. Lily walks on her hands at a speed of 1 meters per second. Now this is either U or V. Again, can't really tell at this point. She then accelerates with a rate of 1.5 meters per second. Okay, so that's A, that's her acceleration. To 10 meters per second. Right, so they've given us her final speed, which means this one is clearly U, her beginning speed. Now the most important thing is here, they ask you for D. So I'm going to go back to my notes and say, right, what's the equation for D? V squared take U squared over 2A. So D equals V squared take U squared over 2A. Now notice, that is just the equation for D. It's not the equation for D squared, so we won't need to square root it at the end. We can just pop our numbers in and get the answer. So V squared is 10 squared, take U squared, which is 1 squared, over 2 times acceleration, 2 times 1.5. So that's 99 over 3. So her distance is 33 meters. Now, screenshot these questions, have a go, and send me a photo of your answers. Don't worry if you're still a little bit hesitant. We will have another lesson on this. But you can do it. I have full faith in you. Right, bye everyone.